G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Adam Stone from Speedlancer. He's based in LA, United States, after moving from Melbourne, Australia about 8 years ago to the US. Thanks for your time today, Adam.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So I reached out on LinkedIn and thought you might be a great guest to come on the cast. So I really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so I run a company called Speedlancer, and we're a freelancing platform. When we started about 7 years ago, six or 7 years ago, there were no real on-demand freelancing platforms. You had to go through like a whole hiring, picking and choosing process, and everyone thought I was crazy. But I knew that there was a need for this based on my previous business where I worked with a lot of freelancers. I started out in my teens in the e-commerce space, which I can talk about as well. But Speedlancer has developed a lot of technology surrounding collaborating freelancers together, concierge services, the ability to communicate with freelancers from your platform of choice, like Slack and Trello and so on. We work on a monthly kind of retainer basis and provide access to all of our different skill sets in content design, animations, front-end web development, video editing, podcast editing, kind of anything that a marketing team would need, Speedlancer can offer. Now what we're working on is actually utilizing the software that we've developed, what we call an internal tool set, and bringing that out for other companies to leverage. And actually small businesses are the perfect client for that. It's an AI project manager or operations assistant that you install in your organization. It'll manage your tasks, follow up with everyone, let you set up workflows within Trello or Asana or Rack, Monday, ClickUp, whatever tool you use. And it'll assign the tasks to the correct people on your team, follow up with them automatically, reward them as well. If someone's performing really well, give them a gift card or an NFT or a skydiving experience. I could talk on and on, but yeah, it's really, really cool software that collaborates tools together and manages team members.
Great. So when do you think that'll be live, and where's the best place for people to be able to check that out?
Yes, that'll be live in April. If you're interested in a pre-launch, shoot me a message on LinkedIn or send me an email, adam@speedlancer.com. But yeah, it'll be live in April. The domain name will be startadam.com, and Adam in this context stands for automated data, automated management. My team came up with the name and I actually don't like it.
Sure. It's not attached to your ego, no.
Oh, look, they actually said, look, you can change your name if you don't like it. And I was like, all right, I'm not even prepared to argue about this, but I do get it. It's the first person, obviously. It has a nice acronym. And they wanted it to be a persona. So I was like, all right, let's go with it.
Great.
But it does require me telling the story every time.
I know.
So people don't think I'm some sort of crazy narcissistic
megalomaniac. Yeah. And how did you start out?
So I started when I was 11 or 12 selling toys on eBay. I've always been an entrepreneur. When I was 14, I started my first real business, which scaled to actually every country on earth, 209 of them, including territory.
What was that business?
So it helped people unlock their phones. If your phone is with one network and you want to move it overseas, you could go through us. And became the largest retail provider. We also serviced TELUS in Canada, which is like the Telstra or AT&T of Canada. So my software was in 160 retail stores there. And you asked about team members managing the team. We were, I guess, quote unquote, like a small business. But everything was outsourced and using freelancers for everything. So I was using the old platforms like Odesk, very early iteration of Fiverr. My whole team while I was studying was remote because I couldn't have anyone sitting next to me while I was in school.
No.
We probably had 20 or so people working for us at the time, and they were all freelance. And this was back in 2012. 2013.
And sorry, you started that business when you were 14.
Yeah.
Great. And so then from that experience, working with all those freelancers, I'm guessing that's where the idea for Speedlancer came up?
Exactly right. So Speedlancer started as a side project. I was studying in Monash, University of Melbourne, commerce law, and basically I'd started it as a side project. It was making like $50 a month or something. And then I met this guy named Dave McClure, who was the founder of 500 Startups, and he was in Melbourne. And I was interning at a startup accelerator, and met Dave. Got to do a unprepared 90-second pitch to him when everyone in the accelerator was basically had their pitch prepared. And so I did this 90-second pitch, and he didn't give me any feedback. And I was like, this is so weird. He gets giving everyone else feedback. Then he came up to me the next day and he said, how do I invest? And I was like, I don't know. I'm studying. Or can I do it remotely? He's like, no, you have to come to San Francisco. I said, all right, when is it? He said, it's in 2 weeks. I was like, can I do like the year later? He's like, no, now or never. So I was like, all right, cool. Guess I'm there. So 2 weeks later, I was in San Francisco.
Wow.
And that opened my eyes to the whole startup world.
And so what year was that you started in Speedlancer then?
2015.
2015. And how old were you then?
20.
20. Wow. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of particularly Speedlancer?
Yeah, so we've done over 10,000 tasks or projects across 2,000 different customers. We've had a lot of business model iterations. We started off as like a Fiverr type experience in the very beginning, and then we introduced complexity where we have technology that assembles teams of freelancers together. And a lot of that workflow technology is what we're bringing in to start Adam as well. So yeah, we don't have 2,000 like subscription customers, unfortunately, but we have helped over 2,000 customers.
Yep.
Team size, you asked about, dealing with like 10 developers right now for Start Adam. Then we have the Speedlancer team, which is pretty condensed considering all the automation that we use. Could really run off one person, which is really nice.
Yep.
But then we have a bunch of freelancers that we use for content and front-end development. And so all the people who interface with us and me on a daily basis is probably around 20 people.
Yep.
So we're not huge or anything, but I'd say we're pretty damn efficient. Like our automations have gotten us to 75% margins.
That's great. That's terrific. And you just started out on your own, I'm assuming. So 1 FTE now to around 20.
Yeah.
Great. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
It was interesting for me because I felt like I had success at a young age. So when I was 14, 15, 16, my company was rocket shipping. And it was a great cash flow business. But the question is like, what is success? And so I had a full existential crisis at about the age of 21. Where I really had to define and redefine success for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had achieved sort of a cash flowing business. It wasn't enough to retire on. It was enough to start. The business grew to like 7 figures, but unfortunately it was in an industry that I knew was never going to be around forever.
Yeah. And
so it was in this, I'd call it like an amazing opportunity. It wasn't my be all and end all purpose, or it at least couldn't be because I knew that it was going to die.
Yep.
It's an interesting question. When did I feel that I was successful? I felt more successful then than I do now. Mm-hmm. If that helps answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And out of interest, what happened with that business? Do you still own it, or you sold it off, or shut it down?
I sold it off. It was pretty much like a shutdown and then sell type situation. I knew it was coming, and that's when I started Speedlancer, more to like diversify. And I knew I wanted to get into the startup world and actually have rather than, I just want to watch my words here, but like rather than have a business, I wanted to sort of see where the startup world would take me.
Yep.
And I now have a perspective of both worlds, and I think there's a happy medium in between. Mm-hmm. The reason I sought out startups beyond the excitement, and this was back in 2013, 2014, when I was considering this sort of thing, I wanted to meet as many interesting people as I could, and it was like a really exciting place to be. But looking back on it, what I really wanted was something that I could grow for an unlimited amount of time with unlimited growth potential. So just the ability to exercise my creativity for as long as I could, I think was really what I was seeking out.
So from that existential crisis when you're 21, what did you come to conclude that what success looks like to you now?
Really only one or two things. So one of them is, I think, a core biological function, or really, if you go beyond that, a core function in the universe is creation, creativity, evolution, change. So if we narrow that down, all those things involve creativity. And I believe, like, if you look into flow state and all that sort of thing, that happens when you're creating, when you're in this operating landscape of, like, you're not just droning around doing day-to-day work, you're actually creating every day. Surfers use their creativity too. I mean, they're creating by just surfing the waves. So in my mind, it doesn't matter what you're doing, how you're doing it. I believe that people are happiest when they can create. So for me, my purpose has become, how can I create every day at the highest level that I can? For me, that's enjoyable. So that's been a core thing for me. Beyond financial goals or anything like that, because I was fortunate. Like, I was driving around a V8 car when I was 18. Now I don't, like, I've been in different, I don't know, like, I also didn't have any responsibilities, so I could travel. I spent 3 years just traveling the world and working. Now none of that is really important to me. Now I seek like a more stable life in one location. And yeah, it's funny when you get those things out of the way, you kind of crave them a bit less.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Okay. I'm a big believer in, we talk a lot about product market fit. I like to speak about, what did I call it? Pricing and product fit.
Yep.
Or actually, it's more like pricing distribution model fit. That's what I was calling it. So how can you, but the reason I say that is because your distribution model, meaning how you're selling your thing or marketing your thing, should dictate your pricing model. If you're going to have something successful. So if you're going out selling to people, like when I was in 500 startups, it was like the pure hustle mentality, like work till 3 o'clock in the morning, get into the office at 9 or 10, like just do it all again the next day for 3 or 4 months. And so what I was doing was just cold calling and cold emailing and trying to sell people. But my product was a $50 task. It wasn't subscription. There was nothing about that. So I would be calling and burning myself out. We'd be getting customers, but they'd spend $20 to $50 if I was lucky. That would be a close for me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense, because even if they were super happy, they just wouldn't remember to come back. Like, it just wasn't a huge thing. So we had to adjust our model to increase the price point. We increased it 10 times by bundling things together. So instead of one content task, you could buy a content package from us, for example. But then we had to move beyond that, because a $50 task became a $500 task. You still can't be selling that over the phone.
No.
$500 is just not going to move the needle. So we needed to make it 10 times that. So we went from $50 to $5,000 through a couple of iterations. By 5,000 comes $500 a month is $6,000 a year. So there you go.
Yep.
And so that becomes a little bit easier to sell over the phone. And since then, we've increased our price point even further. We sell like $2,000 a month packages. Start Atom's going to be about $99 per user per month. So yeah, I mean, there's I like to think about, okay, what is your distribution model? Then what does my pricing need to be? And I think that just dictates a lot of your ability to grow sustainably. Yep. Anyway.
And how did you fund the business?
So Speedlancer was interesting because it was bootstrapped initially, $400, built a landing page using Odesk, Upwork, freelancers, and Fiverr. And then I got a investment check from 500 startups, pre-product, pre-anything, which was really too early. When you don't know what you're building, why are you raising money? But it was sort of shoved down my throat, and I'm grateful, and it was a great experience. And then we started raising money. So we really raised like a seed round, and now we're raising again for Start Atom. But I still like the idea of getting to stopping through break-even points, even if you are raising money.
Yep.
But my first business was completely bootstrapped. So I started that with $50.
That was the eBay when you were 11?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story because I was selling BB guns on eBay. We were living in Chicago at the time, so they're legal here. Granted, maybe not for an 11-year-old, but it was under my dad's name, so it's all good. But I needed $100 for the minimum order from this supplier, and I had $50. So I said to my dad, "Can I borrow $50 to start the company?" He was like, "Well, I'll invest in it." So he gave me $50 to own half the company. I bought the first batch. The next day, I'd made $100 on eBay. So I was like, "Dad, I've got the money now. Can I buy you out?"
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not how it works, but he let me do it. But he likes to remind me that he should own 50% of everything I do now.
That's good.
And then from that, I basically bankrolled it. So started that, took cash from that, started my phone services website. I think that was with $400. And then that was completely bootstrapped, just like bankrolling, hiring developers to do a lot of automation. That was very unique. And that drove up our margin. So I'm a big believer in automation for small businesses, because I think that can get you just dramatically more margin and money in your pocket.
Absolutely. Yeah. And very scalable too, what you're doing with Start Atom.
100%. And that's what we're aiming to help small businesses with, is scaling their businesses. So how can you set up every company? Like, you're running a podcast, right? Like, you probably have 5 steps involved in every podcast. You need to reach out to people. You have someone doing it for you. Then once they're booked in with you, then you record the episode. Someone then needs to edit it, and then maybe you have someone else converting into content, social media, depending on your budget and how that all works. But that's 5 or 6 steps right there. So you could set up in Trello different lanes, columns, based on those workflow steps and who's responsible for each lane. So your content editor is responsible for the editing step, and then a content writer is responsible for the next one. Someone has to syndicate it and post it. So you can involve your team members, freelancers, external parties, whatever, and it automates those steps. So I think that's going to help a lot of companies out.
Yeah, great. And I'm just trying to do the math, and I haven't had enough coffee this morning. How old are you now? 28?
27, yeah.
27. Yeah, great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Would I go into my industry?
Yeah.
I'd go into my industry knowing what I know. I don't think I would go into it blindly. I think, look, in the last 6 months, there's been so many freelancing marketplaces launching. So I think they're all coming way too late, and they don't know how to automate things. They don't have any of that technology. So they're not going to understand the unit economics. So I wouldn't go into that. It's becoming quite competitive. In terms of our SaaS, I don't think I would build it if I didn't know what I know. So I'm hoping that gives me an advantage when building it out. Now, also our team is amazing. I'm working with a AI professor as my CTO, and extraordinary engineers. So yes and no. I don't know how to answer that. Would I go into the tech industry? Absolutely, for sure. Because if you're a small business and you're making money, I mean, that's and you have something innovative there, that's when I would take the gamble, using some of your cash flows to go and actually launch something that could have just a crazy valuation, especially with cash flow behind you.
Yep.
No opportunity like there is now. I mean, SaaS and startups are just a gold mine. Valuations have never been higher. It's worth the risk. It's worth this. Just change to be able to, for the chance, let's say there's a 10% chance of succeeding. Let's say success is generational wealth. Well, in what other landscape is there an opportunity to build generational wealth with a 10% chance of success? That seems very high to me.
Yeah, absolutely. How long ago did your interest in AI begin?
Well, I guess with Speedlancer, we developed technology from the start, which is funny because we're talking to one of our competitors right now who wants to leverage Start Atom for their marketplace. We're speaking to a number of marketplaces right now who want to leverage our tech. And this one started without any technology, and they've grown to like $20 million a year. But without any technology. So it was funny because we started with technology, but without really a market for it. And so hence the pivot, I guess. But it's kind of my AI focus started from the beginning of Speedlancer for sure.
Yeah. And you're not a nerd because you studied commerce law. So, but
no, that sounds pretty nerdy to me.
But I mean, you get in under the hood of AI. It's something you enjoy, like looking at the code and working, understanding, etc.
I actually don't code.
Yep.
My tech team called me a very high level guy the other day.
Right. Definitely
which
not
is
a nerd then.
yeah, I don't know. I can't code. It's not my thing, but I certainly have worked with developers since I was like 15 years old. I had my first one, so I know a lot about server infrastructure and the way that they work. I can provision new servers and do a lot of that stuff, but I don't actually do the code. It's like I describe it as walking around the street blind.
Yep.
Possible. It's far from ideal, but if you know what you're doing and you know the streets well enough, you can
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah, it must be very dangerous not having tech companies and not being, that technical in your training. But clearly, you've hiring the right people and partnering up. Your CTO is a professor of AI. That's a pretty good person to trust.
Yeah, and I know enough about architecture, right? So I can architect technology, and I'll often provide suggestions to a tech team and say, look, this is how I would do it, at least in theory. I guess that's how Steve Jobs sort of do it, and it got him into trouble, but it was also an advantage in a way because he wasn't aware of any constraints.
Yes.
So whereas my team, like in a product meeting the other day, we actually speak a lot about Apple versus Android in our product design meetings, and it's like our internal team mantra, like, okay, Android will give the user all the options, Apple won't give them any options, and we want to be more like Apple, right? Like we're building a complex AI, but we don't want the user to have to choose, okay, what frequency should we follow up with your team? Like, no, the AI should just know that answer.
Yeah.
How often should it check the Trello board to refresh it? One option would be, oh, give the user the choice every 5 minutes, every hour, every day. Well, no, that's why is that a decision? And a specific product feature that came up the other day was like with those workflow automations in Trello, how can like what happens if you allocate a task in a column? Let's say you allocate a column to your editor, podcast editor.
Yep.
But let's say for one episode, you really have another editor coming in, or your current editor is overwhelmed. So you want to reassign it to a secondary one. So you choose that, and then there's a conflict because you got one overriding the other. And so my tech team, their answer was, oh, no worries, we'll just send a conflict message out on Slack saying, oh, two people have been assigned, oh no. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't be coming to the user with a problem.
No.
Just know what their intention is, which is that they've overridden the original choice. And my team was like, okay, that's fine, but like this actually creates a lot of complexity behind the scenes.
Yep.
So that I can imagine, but as a non-technical person, I'm like, this is how it has to work.
Yep.
For the user. So it gives me the ability to take a different vantage point than the technical vantage point. And we meet in the middle, obviously.
Yeah, that's good. I can see how that's an advantage. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
There's been a lot of failures along the way. And just like crazy failures that people would be like, what the hell? How do you deal with that? For example, after 500 startups, I went back to Australia, and it's funny because I said I grew up in Chicago, went through middle school out there. We actually had our green cards, but then a month before I went to 500 startups, we gave it up because having a green card is actually hard to keep if you're not living in the US permanently. So we gave it up a month before. So a month later, I was in San Francisco for 500. So after 6 months, my visa had expired. I went back to Australia, and I had this investor offering me $500,000 right on the spot, like after 500. And they were like, come to the US to sign the check. And I said, well, I'll be there in 2 weeks. And then I had to go to the Melbourne consulate. The guy at the consulate was just such a prick and rejected my visa on the spot. And so I wasn't allowed in the US for 2.5 years. So to deal with that, like personal setback and rejection was just massive. And it held back the company like 18 months, probably lost us all our advantage. And that was emotionally very difficult to not be in that location. And this was again before the startup world had caught up to like distributed work, and even like Zoom obviously wasn't around. So that was a really big one. And then fundraising challenges. I've had a co-founder pull out. I've had like we're talking 24 hours before the money is due to be wired, and the fundraising round just collapsing.
Jeez.
Said he wasn't feeling it anymore.
Yep.
So people issues and all that sort of stuff, just like how to navigate that. Like my first response was just anger.
Yeah.
Like, how could you do that? And we caught up, and he's doing nasty things. Like it was happy hour. He was ordering drinks and like eating my food, like literally reaching across the table and eating it. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Acting crazy. And it was just shit like that. And then it was funny. I called my advisor and told him what happened. He's like, well, what did you do? I said, well, I stormed out. I was like, get out of my face. And I never really, like, I'm a chill guy. So for me to say that to someone is like, they must have really done something hurtful.
Yeah.
The round was going, like, literally, we had signed term sheets. Everything was done. The money was going to be wired the next day on my birthday, November 1st. And he pulled out October 31st. And so I called my advisor. He's like, no, you need to go back. You can't leave on that note. I'm like, why not? He's like, well, because he could make or break your fundraising round still. I was like, all right, fine. So I went back and he wasn't there, and I called him and I'm like, look, I'm really sorry the way I behaved. And, you know, I just had to apologize and do the right thing on my end.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's another challenge, and I can talk for an hour, 2 hours of just about challenges.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Storytelling.
Good answer.
Very hard. I can tell a story. You can probably see I can talk, but I can't talk in a concise way.
Yeah.
Law school taught me how to condense a paragraph into a sentence into a couple of words.
Yeah.
I've got that power, which is amazing. Like, that's just an amazing skill to have. But what I can't do is the ability to, when you're building a product, like, I know all the features. I know every single little tiny feature that's involved. So then how am I supposed to articulate that into one sentence that is good for the masses while still conveying everything that we do?
Yeah. And
that's something that, honestly, I can help other people with that a little bit. Like, if I'm looking at their slide deck, I can provide feedback easily. But for my own company, I don't know how people do it, because you're just bombarded with details. So I've had to learn a process that works for me, which I've never properly thought about, but it's definitely a process I use. Like, I'll put together a slide deck myself, and then I'll immediately show it to other people. Then without even thinking about it, I'll just take their feedback on board.
Yep.
Like, what things are resonating with them? If I show it to 3 people and they all understand it in a certain way, okay, that's how I'm pitching it. No questions. It's not about me, it's about them.
Yep.
So I've developed a process that works for me, but that's a big challenge.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I mean, growth solves all problems. I don't think there's anything not to enjoy about fast growth. I mean, sometimes you have issues, right? And you need to maintain a level head, like practice meditation and that sort of thing, because you need to be able to think on your feet. It's like boxing. I love boxing. The ability to sort of, you're only using two tools, but it's so simple. You need to, like, remove yourself from the situation. Anyway, like, with fast growth, you often have to make decisions really quickly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, think on your feet, and while keeping a level head so you don't get whacked in the face.
Yep.
Like, last year I had to make a full team change in about 48 hours because of some mistakes happened that then caused a lot of frustration within the team, that then caused an echo chamber. And that's when I had to be like, all right, what are my options here? And I had to act really quickly and develop a game plan. And that's something I really enjoy. I can see a lot of people not knowing how to cope, and then their company would fail right there. But when something becomes really stressful and I have to think about how am I going to solve it, that's part of something that I enjoy about business.
Next question is around that. What do you love most about growing a small business?
The creativity, the ability to control and understand what's going on. If something fails, it's because of me. The ability to choose my own hours. Although they say, like, you choose your own 80 hours a week.
Yeah, when you work those 80 hours, you get to choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But honestly, what I've learned is things are such a marathon, not a sprint. Like, I can go in sprints and build things. It doesn't mean that people are going to use it.
Yeah.
So what's the point of me burning myself out if I actually have to burn myself out again and again and again and again in order to find out what's right? So I've taken a much more healthy approach these days.
Yep. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Understanding what success means and redefining what success means. Not being held back by prior successes or failures.
What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Probably the ability to move with the times and be technologically forward.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Sometimes I would add people previously tactically, like my co-founder. He was the principal of the fund that was going to lead the round. So I would describe that as a tactical inclusion. Didn't pay off.
Yep.
He was aligned, very philosophically aligned with what we're building. He still would be today. Very intelligent. I mean, the guy was in the NSA, the National Security Agency, Harvard Business School, was deployed in Iraq in military intelligence, did West Point Military Academy and learned how to code, like just absolute. The guy could play any role he wanted, but ultimately there wasn't a deep personal philosophical alignment, I think.
Yeah.
So now that's what I look for, or try to look for. Obviously, I still make mistakes.
Yeah,
it's like dating, like, right? Like if you notice a red flag, it's probably a red flag.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, across all those businesses you've had, you would have had to hire and move on a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep people close. I still have someone working for me. He was my first ever employee, Perry.
Yeah.
He's still full-time with us. Yeah, I like to keep people for as long as is practical.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like I had someone working for me for 7 years, and we just had to, like, during the shift to start Adam, we couldn't kind of adapt and stay in the same line, but we're still really good friends. He's got a better paying job now, so I'm pretty stoked about it. No, I don't normally have people quit on me, thankfully.
No. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
This is going to be somewhat controversial, but my theory around maintaining a culture is people need to be around for the right internal motivations. External motivations can be great. Like with Start Adam, we're building the ability to automate, gift card rewards and all those little things. I don't think that's going to make or break a culture. I think that's more of a little fun thing that a company can include. What's important is not the free food, not the free anything. People can work for free if they're really aligned. So it's not, and to be clear, I don't do that. I'm just sort of stretching it philosophically on both ends, the logic. So my belief, the controversial part is I believe people need to come for their own reasons. And in order for people to find their own reasons, it's not something I as a founder can find for them. I can show them, okay, this is the path we're going on. This is the path that I believe in. This is why I do and we do what we do. But someone's internal motivations are extremely different. So how then do you find that intrinsic motivation, and how do you encourage people to find it for themselves? In my opinion, when someone starts working, I don't make it all airy fairy. I go down into the weeds and actually probably have them working the hardest that they're going to work with us, knowing that there will be attrition in that time.
Yep.
It's not like I'm trying to do something artificial. It's that I prefer not to try to ease people into a new position. I throw them into the deep end and see how they respond. And obviously I'm there and the team is there to help them and guide them. And, we have friendly discussions and whatever, but ultimately it is about the work. And then they get to decide if there's something about the work and the vision that suits them.
Yep.
And I found that's how to build a really, really, really robust team that then stays for years.
Yep. Great advice.
And enjoys it.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I'm one of those people who doesn't really believe in work-life balance. It's more like a work-life synchrony. Like, how can you work and live at the same time? Like, sometimes you just need to go take yourself for a nice dinner, or you need to work out in the middle of the day. Like, as long as you are achieving the tasks that you need to achieve, then I don't care how they get done or when they get done. So I don't track time or anything with the team. Like, I think because I've worked a lot in the outsourcing and freelancing space, like I've never been an hourly based person, only purely outcomes based. So yeah.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
A lot. I think like during my existential crisis phase, I mean, it was as serious as it can get. I had no choice but to like book in a psychologist or a therapist who I still see every day. So if you quantify that, I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars. But it's paid dividends for sure, and it's helped me keep going.
Yep.
So yeah, I love self-development and learning and introspection and all that sort of thing.
And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah, for sure. I have probably a dozen different mentors that I can seek advice for different things.
Yeah, that's great.
A lot of those mentors then become friends also, because once you start mentoring the mentor, then you're sort of at the same level, which is nice.
Yep. Now, assuming you've got a board of directors?
No, we actually don't. We have investors, and they, I guess, act as an informal board of directors.
Yep. All right, Adam, you're one of the few we've had on that's exited a business, both financially and operationally. Do you have any advice for our audience that may be thinking about exiting down the track? Or anything you do differently?
Yeah, my exit was kind of unconventional because it was a very small number, and the revenue was way higher than the actual exit itself. So I'd call it more of a failure than a success in terms of the exit itself. My advice then would be, if your business is stagnating and it's at its peak and you know you can't find a way to improve it, you must exit then.
Yep.
That's my advice.
So I guess it's that continual awareness that has this thing got longevity in life? If not, it's time to start looking at the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to find a way of pitching it with a vision in mind. So you need to show that it's going to keep doing that despite you knowing that it's going to do that.
Yeah.
So you need to show that there's a benefit there. Otherwise, your multiple is going to be that multiple, which is going to be exactly equivalent to you just keep running the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which then is the decision that I ended up doing. I was like, well, if someone's going to offer me 1x revenue, I'm just going to keep running it for a year. Mm-hmm. And it started doing, it went like that, and then it went like that, and then it went like that. And every offer I was getting was always exactly the same. So I just was like, I'm just going to keep running it out, which actually worked in my favor, because if I had sold it for 1x revenue, I would have missed out on all of that.
Yes.
Which was still something.
All right, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing growing a small business?
Probably growth.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Favorite business book that has helped me the most. There's Venture Deals by Brad Feld, which is very helpful for companies looking to raise money. I'm mainly into like psychology books, but I can't really think of one right now.
Yep.
There's a Robert Greene books that I've just started reading, so I think that's probably a good one.
What do you know the title?
I just went blank. I literally started reading it yesterday.
I'll quickly have a look here. 48 Laws of Power.
The other one, Principles of something.
Mastery, Laws of Human Nature.
Yeah, Laws of Human Nature. That's the one.
Cool. Great. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Invisibility is really good. I prefer philosophical and psychological podcasts than actual business oriented ones. Often I'll seek a business podcast if I have a specific question in mind, and then it's probably just the common podcast that everyone's heard of. So nothing really particular.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Notion's really good these days. Superhuman for email is really good. I use Superhuman, and then I actually have a VA, a virtual assistant, going through my inbox every week and triaging my emails. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 based on urgent to not urgent or other. And then I could just...
Yeah, what's Superhuman?
Superhuman is an email client like Gmail, basically, right. Except they charge more money. It's $29 a month, so it's not cheap. But it saves me so much time.
Yep.
You can create split inboxes at the top, which work with my triaging. So my VA will go through and like triage the emails for me. So that's a really good hack.
That's great. Yeah, Notion I've just started looking into and probably shifting over to that. It's a good tool. Like Evernote's, used to use Evernote. I have to open it up once a year. I've got a couple of lists on there, I still haven't moved, but it just feels like a product that was built in the 1980s.
Yeah, seriously, Notion is great.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out, aged 11?
Think about what success really means. Why is it a financial goal? Why is it a number? What is it? Maybe breaking even and living a good life and enjoying the process is a good success factor. I'd say breaking even, living a decent life while you're working on a really large vision is success right there, because it's rejuvenating, lets you keep going, and you're living a good life. So what's wrong with that?
Great. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Adam. I think the audience will get a shit ton of value out of what you've shared with us. Really interesting journey, especially starting age 11. I think I was around that age when I started my first lawn mowing business in country Victoria.
Nice.
And yeah, going from 1 to now 20 FTE for Speedlancer. Wonderful growth. We'll have to have you back on in a year or so to see how Start Adam's gone.
Yeah, sounds good. It'll either be up there or it'll be in a pit. So look forward to it.
Great. Thanks, Adam.
Cool. See ya. Bye.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.